From New Delhi, you're watching Today India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, coming up in the next 30 minutes. Ahead of Friday's Alaska summit, Trump threatens Putin of very severe consequences if Russia blocks Ukraine peace. Brazil unveils aid package for exporters hit by US tariffs. Sovereign Brazil aid plan centered on $5.5 billion credit line. Brazilian president says no retaliation for now. President Draupadi Murmu to address the nation on the eve of the 79th Independence Day. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to lead the Independence Day celebrations from the iconic Red Fort in Delhi. And wildfires fanned by heat wave and strong winds rage across southern Europe. Thousands battle Greece wildfires while Spain seeks help from EU partners to tackle wildfires. Italy, France on alert. And on to the details now. US President Donald Trump issued a stark warning to Russian President Vladimir Putin, threatening severe consequences if Moscow obstructs peace in Ukraine. Trump did not specify what the consequences could be, but hinted that punitive measures, possibly economic sanctions, could follow if their scheduled meeting in Alaska on Friday fails to produce results. However, Trump stressed that the talks would serve as a stepping stone for a possible second meeting, this time involving Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Trump did not provide a time frame for the second meeting.
Consequences if Vladimir Putin does not agree to stop the war after your meeting on Friday?
Yes, they will. Yeah.
What will the consequences
there will be
be?
consequences.
Sanctions, tariffs?
There will be, I don't have to say, there will be very severe consequences.
However, Russia is likely to resist Ukraine and Europe's demands strongly, and previously has said its stance had not changed since it was first detailed by Putin in June 2024. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Alexei Fadiv earlier said Moscow's stance had not changed since last year. Also, French President Emmanuel Macron said Trump agreed Ukraine must be involved in any discussions about ceding land, while German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who hosted the virtual meeting, said the principle that borders could not be changed by force must continue to apply. And the Brazilian government has unveiled a plan to support local exporters impacted by the 50% tariff imposed by the United States. Brazilian President Lula da Silva on Wednesday announced the aid package to help exporters hurt by steep U.S. tariffs. The program, called Sovereign Brazil, offers $5.5 billion US dollars in credit along with tax relief and insurance support. President Lula said the plan was a first step and vowed that Brazil would not be cowed by Washington's move, which he called baseless. Other measures announced by the Brazilian government include postponing tax charges for companies affected by U.S. tariffs, providing $926,000 US dollars in tax credits to small and medium-sized companies until the end of 2026, and expanding access to insurance against cancelled orders. The plan also incentivizes public purchases of items that could not be exported to the U.S. The measures take effect immediately, but will only stay in place for 4 months unless congressional leaders act. U.S. President Donald Trump hiked duties on several goods from Brazil to 50% from 10% early this month. Although some sectors were exempted from the steeper levies, the move is still set to hurt industries such as coffee, beef, seafood, textiles, footwear and fruit. Well, Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva had already signaled his administration would not immediately retaliate against the tariff hike, instead prioritizing support for the most affected sectors. Well, Gaza ceasefire talks are back on the table, with Hamas leaders in Egypt's capital, Cairo, seeking a 60-day truce, even as Israel prepares for a major offensive on the Gaza city. The next report tells you more.
A Hamas delegation led by chief negotiator Khalil al-Hayya was in Cairo on Wednesday for fresh talks on a temporary 60-day ceasefire. The host, Egypt, says talks aim at ending hostilities and securing a prisoner exchange that would see all Israeli captives, alive and dead, returned in a single deal. On the ground, Israeli forces have intensified strikes in Gaza City. The military says it has approved the framework for a new offensive in the Strip, days after Israel's security cabinet ordered the capture of Gaza's largest city. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated his stance. Netanyahu said, "They are not being pushed out. They will be allowed to exit." All those who are concerned for the Palestinians and say they want to help the Palestinians should open their gates and stop lecturing us. Meanwhile, countries continue to send aid to Gaza. In Indonesia, a ceremony in Jakarta marked the departure of 2 Hercules aircraft loaded with over 800 tons of relief supplies. The mission will deliver the aid via Jordan's Al Jun air base before it's airdropped into Gaza.
This task force will deliver at least 800 tons of aid and 1,000 packages of instant noodles from Indonesian Defense Ministry. This aid will be distributed through a low-cost, low-altitude method, which is safer than other delivery methods.
As diplomacy plays out in Cairo and aid missions push through, the fate of Gaza now hinges on whether talks can pause the fighting or if the region is headed for yet another escalation. With Amish Mahajan, Amit Mukherjee for DD India.
Well, family of hostage Bipin Joshi, a citizen of Nepal, visited Kibbutz Alamim on Wednesday, from where he is reported to be kidnapped on October 7, 2023. They visited the place where Joshi lived, met his friends and received intelligence reports. Bipin Joshi of Nepal was in Israel to study agriculture, and during his studies he was abducted by Hamas. His mother Padma and sister Pushpa were shown the buildings that were damaged in the kibbutz and lit candles to commemorate all the Nepali tire workers kidnapped and murdered on the day of the deadly Hamas attack. Nepal's Ministry of Foreign Affairs had earlier intensified diplomatic efforts for the release of Bipin Joshi. Joshi's ordeal indicates the plight of innocents being dragged into the damages caused by conflict. Bipin hails from Bhimdatta municipality of Kanchanpur district in western Nepal. No information about the 24-year-old has been received since the day he was kidnapped. On 7 October 2023, during an attack on Israeli territory, Hamas killed over 1,000 people, including 10 Nepalese students, and abducted several others, including Bipin Joshi being one. And hailed by some as a hero and scorned by others as a traitor, Hong Kong's prominent businessman Jimmy Lai is in the final stage of his national security trial. Closing arguments, which begin on Thursday for Lai, who is accused of colluding with foreign forces under a Beijing-imposed national security law. The trial has drawn international attention, with the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer calling for Lai's release. Lai has been detained since December 2020 and faces a maximum sentence of life imprisonment if he is convicted. Court exteriors as prosecutors and defense lawyers begin closing arguments in the landmark national security trial of Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai. The hearings are scheduled to last 8 days. And in the latest with North Korea and South Korea split, the powerful sister of North Korea's leader have denied reports by the South Korean military that Pyongyang had removed propaganda loudspeakers along the border. Kim Yo-jong underscored that the South's effort to ease the tensions were worthless. Since his election in June, South Korean President Lee Jae-myung has vowed to reach out to the nuclear-armed North and pursue dialogue without preconditions, in a reversal from his hawkish predecessor. The two countries had halted propaganda broadcast along the demilitarized zone. Seoul's military said in June, after Lee's election. South Korea's defense ministry said it had begun removing loudspeakers from its sides of the border as a practical measure aimed at helping ease tensions. North Korea dismissed such gestures. And at least 26 people died in a migrant shipwreck off the southern Italian island of Lampedusa. Over 60 were brought ashore, although the death toll was still provisional amid ongoing search operations. An Italian law enforcement aircraft spotted a capsized boat with bodies in the water about 23 kilometers off Lampedusa, triggering a rescue operation. Since the beginning of this year, 675 people have died in the central Mediterranean while trying to make the crossing. And some weather updates now. Greece battled a dozen major wildfires on Wednesday, including one threatening its third largest city, Patras, as a heat wave stoked blazes and forced the evacuation of thousands in southern Europe. Firefighters were struggling to tame blazes in several countries in southern Europe, including Albania, Greece, Montenegro, Spain and in Turkey. Strong winds, prolonged dryness and intense heat have worsened conditions across much of the mainland and on the islands, forcing evacuations and dramatic rescue operations in recent days. Well, the authorities in Greece have deployed nearly 5,000 firefighters and 62 aircraft, along with several Coast Guard vessels, and they warned of a very difficult day ahead. Extreme temperatures have gripped much of southern Europe since Friday, fueling fires that had claimed at least 2 lives in recent days. On Wednesday, the toll continued to climb. Meanwhile, the Spanish government on Wednesday said it had asked the European Union for its help in fighting several wildfires across the country, in particular 2 waterbombing planes. Regional authorities said almost 6,000 people from 26 localities had been evacuated from their homes, while 7 people had been admitted to hospital for burns, including 4 in critical condition. Neighboring Portugal also deployed more than 2,100 firefighters and 20 aircraft against 5 major blazes, with efforts focused on the fire in the central municipality of Trancoso that has raged since Saturday. Well, dozens of blazes also stretch emergency services in the Balkans, where a severe drought and a prolonged heat wave have exacerbated the region's traditional fire season. Authorities have evacuated residents in parts of central and southern Albania, but easing weather conditions in neighboring Montenegro helped firefighters protect homes. Also, thousands of people in eastern Canada under evacuation orders and thousands more have been warned to be on high alert as quick-moving wildfires burn out of control during what has become Canada's second worst wildfire season on record. According to the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Centre, there are over 700 active fires in Canada, including 161 considered out of control, with nearly every province and territory impacted. And still to come in this edition of DD India Live. In line with India's Independence Day 2025 celebrations, the Har Ghar Tiranga campaign saw enthusiastic participation across the country. India glows in tricolor as nation gears up to celebrate 79th Independence Day. And India observes Partition horrors Remembrance Day to honor victims of 1947 tragedy.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, and moving on, President Draupadi Murmu will address the nation on the eve of the 79th Independence Day. The address will be broadcast from 1900 hours IST on the entire national network of All India Radio and telecast over all channels of Doordarshan in Hindi, followed by the English version. Broadcast of the address in Hindi and English on Doordarshan will be followed by broadcast in regional languages by regional channels of Doordarshan. All India Radio will broadcast regional language versions at 21:30 hours IST on its respective regional networks. And the nation will celebrate the 79th Independence Day on August 15th with Prime Minister Narendra Modi leading the celebrations from the iconic Red Fort in Delhi. The Prime Minister will unfurl the national flag and address the nation from the ramparts of the iconic monument. Well, as the nation is making giant strides towards realizing the government's vision of Viksit Bharat by 2047, the theme of this year's celebration is Naya Bharat. The celebrations will serve as a platform to commemorate the continuing rise of a prosperous, secure and bold Naya Bharat and provide renewed power to surge further ahead on the path to progress. The success of Operation Sindoor will be celebrated during the Independence Day celebrations this year. Approx 5,000 special guests from different walks of life have been invited to witness the celebrations at Red Fort this year. Over 1,500 people from various states, union territories dressed in traditional attire have also been invited to witness the grand ceremony. And as preparations for the 79th Independence Day is underway across India, Mandi House metro station in national capital New Delhi is lit up in tricolor ahead of the Independence Day. Northern state of Rajasthan's Ajmer has also been illuminated in tricolor ahead of the celebrations. While in Punjab's Bathinda Fort is adorned in tricolor. In Uttar Pradesh, District Magistrate's office in Ghaziabad has been illuminated in the colours of the tricolor. Also, ahead of the Independence Day celebration, Mumbai's CSMT and BMC Heritage Building illuminated in the colours of the tricolor. And in southern state of Karnataka, Kalaburagi railway station has also been lit up in the colours of the tricolor. And as part of India's Independence Day 2025 celebrations, the Har Ghar Tiranga Yatra received enthusiastic participation nationwide. In Chandigarh, the 13th Battalion of CRPF held a Har Ghar Tiranga Yatra on Wednesday. The rally included CRPF personnel, students, teachers and locals from Chandigarh and also featured a motorcycle rally led by women officers. In New Delhi, the traffic police held a bike rally, actively promoting the campaign through rallies, school visits and patriotic programs. The Sam Rifles on Wednesday organized a Tiranga March and a 5-kilometer Tiranga Run. About 100 soldiers carried the national flag during the march. The Tiranga Run featured civilians running alongside combatants, symbolizing unity and patriotism. Well, a tricolor rally was also held in Rajasthan's Ajmer as part of the Har Ghar Tiranga campaign. The rally saw enthusiastic participation from youth and the locals. Well, Partition Horrors Remembrance Day is observed annually on August 14th in India to honor millions of people who suffered during the partition of India and Pakistan in 1947. Here's a report.
August 14th, 1947. A day etched in history not only as the birth of two nations, India and Pakistan, but also the beginning of one of the most painful chapters in human memory. On this day, India remembers millions whose lives were torn apart by the partition of India. Indians honor the resilience of those who endured unimaginable suffering during the division of British India. Declared in 2021, this day is a solemn tribute to the victims of one of the largest mass migrations in history.
अब से हर वर्ष 14 अगस्त को विभाजन विभीषिका स्मृति दिवस के रूप में याद किया जाएगा। जो लोग विभाजन के समय अमानवीय हालात से गुजरे, जिन्होंने अत्याचार सहे, जिन्हें सम्मान के साथ अंतिम संस्कार तक नसीब नहीं हुआ, उन लोगों का हमारी स्मृतियों में जीवित रहना भी उतना ही जरूरी है।
After this announcement by India's Prime Minister, Partition Horrors Remembrance Day is observed annually on August 14 in India to commemorate the victims who suffered during the partition of India in 1947. The goal is to educate, to reflect, and to ensure that such horrors are never repeated. So let's understand in details what actually happened during India's partition. On February 20, 1947, British Prime Minister Clement Attlee announced in the House of Commons that the government had decided to leave India by transfer of power before June 30, 1948. However, the entire process was expedited by Lord Mountbatten a year earlier. Mountbatten returned to New Delhi on 31st May 1947 with approval for the transfer of power from London. The plan of partition was broadly agreed upon in the historic meeting on June 2, 1947. The Indian Independence Act 1947 received royal assent and came into force on 18th July 1947. This act implemented the Mountbatten Plan for the independence and partition of India. India attained its freedom from British rule on the 15th of August 1947, which is celebrated as Independence Day each year in India. The partition caused amongst the largest migrations in human history, affecting about 20 million people. Millions of families had to abandon their ancestral villages, towns, cities, and were forced to find a new life as refugees. The divide and rule policy of the British strategically seeded the roots of communalism in India and was later cultivated by Jinnah and the Muslim League. With his policy of the two-nation theory, which was the prime reason for the creation of Pakistan, the partition of India is a story of violence, cruelty, rape, torture, unprecedented human displacement, and forced migration. It is a story in which millions sought new homes in environments that were alien and resistive. Partition Horrors Remembrance Day is not just about looking back. It's about building bridges between communities, generations, and nations. Bureau Report, DD India.
And moving on, the iconic Dwarkadhish temple in Devbhoomi, Dwarka has been beautifully illuminated ahead of the upcoming Janmashtami celebrations, drawing devotees and tourists from across the country. Janmashtami is an Indian festival celebrated to commemorate the birth of Lord Krishna, who is revered as the 8th avatar of Lord Vishnu. This year, vibrant lighting and elaborate decorations have transformed the ancient temple complex into a glowing spectacle. Pilgrims and Krishna devotees have already begun to arrive in large numbers, with many taking part in special prayers and darshan. All right, that's all for this edition of DD India Live. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Lipakshi Khurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.